Hello everyone and welcome to a very special episode of Let's Play Tome Tales of Maj'Eyal. So this episode is going to be really short. I'm basically just going to read two pieces of lore that I bought in Engelwyn. I didn't read them in a regular episode because they are really kind of long. So I'm going to read both of these. If you don't give a shit, feel free to skip this episode. If you do, then stick around for the next few minutes as I read to you, I guess. So anyway. So this is from Engelwyn. It is the Lecture on Humanity by the Archmage Linanil. It was some years now since twain of our brightest students left Engelwyn, sullied by our veil of secrecy and our silent duty. It still lies heavy on mine heart to think of what they could accomplish within our private circle, but I hope that one day they will, whilst return her use of old world words and grammar is kind of bugging me. And they, whilst understand the reasons behind our solemn mission. But I must think of the future. Far too many are the regrets of mine long past, and to hold their burdens over long is to be crushed. I must think of ye, young acolytes, who start now in the learning of our laws. I must explain to ye our mission, our purpose, our justification, so that ye understand all what we do and why. In secrecy, we operate, trying to heal the harms of our past, trying to build a better future, but our presence is great. Our penance is great, not presence, penance. And never should it be forgotten in all Maj'Eyal the terrors of the Spellblaze. I should now know, for I should know well, for I were there. I'm not reading right at all tonight. But a young mage was I, though not without promise. I knew of the Shaloran mages' experiments on the Shertul ruins, and I were jealous of the powers they sought to unlock. No fear or caution had I in my arrogant youth, thinking only of opportunities and glory. Heed well that thought. 2,600 cycles of the sun have passed above my head, and yet still I cannot shake the memory of the day the sky turned to flame and the earth was torn to shreds. I feel the magic in the air, the sudden unleashing of arcane energies beyond anyone's control. I knew in an instant that the Shaloran had unlocked the power of the far portals, but the forces were far beyond their expectations. I saw within seconds the streams of blazing energy tearing through the sky and above our heads, and then rain down in crimson plumes of destruction. It was all I could to put a shield about myself, and the burns I suffered were terrible, such that scars remain to this day. No one about me survived. Should I remember mine sister, Mira's shortened screams, as she stood beside me, her skin flayed off by the terrible energies, her body consumed by a pyre of flames, her ashes strewn by a great tumult in the earth. 26 centuries have passed, and still I do wake to the sound of that scream. So long. Many were the loved ones I lost that day, and I were not alone. Countless perished across the lands, and countless more died in the chaos which followed. Then the Spellblaze began. Wow, so that wasn't even the fucked up part. Then the spell hunt began. Oh, spell hunt. Bleh. I know how to read. And the people rose against the arrogance of the mages and began slaughtering us mercilessly. After the Spellblaze, our abilities were in disarray, our mana channels sundered. We were nigh defenseless, and it took great effort to gather many of us together and found the hidden city of Engelwyn. A great many mages were killed in the riots that followed, and many innocents too, for distrust was rife, and the thirst for blood all-consuming. But alas, the suffering did not end there. The effects of the Spellblaze can still be seen today in tortured land and blighted earth. In the Age of Dusk, it were much worse. New diseases arose, plagues swept across all cities, and civilizations brought to nothing. All our races came close to extinction, and an age of darkness came upon all learning and enlightenment. Feudal lords and bandit gangs fought among what little healthy lands were left, while the blights continued to ravage what free people remained. That was when I began our secret missions to repair the world, to make right the errors of our actions. In silent operation, we visited the broken lands, and used our powers to heal, not to destroy. Many centuries it took, but at last the after effects of the Spellblaze began to diminish, and the people began to rebuild. God, there's so much of this. How much hope was in me then, but foolish were I to think it could be so easy. The wounds of Maj'Eyal struck deeper than mere diseases on the surface. The poison went down much farther, and the cracks tore through the very roots of our world. One dark and stormy day, a great cataclysm swept forth from the east, and the land rose 500 leagues into the sky. We could do naught but gasp in horror as whole cities, whole races were swept into the sea. The continents were sheared apart and all of Eyal forever changed. It was a sight to humble even the greatest Archmage. Aye, and humility is what I teach to ye now. Know ye well that there are forces out there which dwarf ye into insignificance. Know as well that they have no glory, no pride, for they are forces of ultimate destruction, which bring only terror and pain. Our mission is to help the world. Our penance is to act in secret. Old wounds remain, and new threats do arise, but all must be dealt with from behind our cloak of silence. The mistrust of our ilk still lies deep in people's minds, and there are even those who hate us with a violent passion. But the world is changing, and perhaps one day we shall be accepted again in society. Until then, remember well this lesson of humility, and in the open world keep ye secret, and keep ye safe. Ugh, that is so long. 6 minutes it took me to read, and I got another one to go through. So, buckle up, boys and girls. Here we go again. Alright, so Engelwin, Lecture on the Nature of Magic by Archmage Terralion. Hopefully he doesn't speak in Old World speak, which is hurting my throat. Text. What is magic? A study by Archmage Tazamar Terralion. I'm assuming you pronounced that with a little bit of, Leon. Anyway. How uncouth and common a question it must seem, and yet it is the one I am asked most often, even by some of our most learned students. Too often we teach the art of practice and imitation and concentration on the end effects, without teaching in greater detail of the underlying principles. Just as a musician may merely play on his harp, may merely play on his harp without knowing how the sound arises from the vibration of the strings, so a mage may make use of magic without realizing the true forces at work. In this document I hope to give learning on the nature of magic, and how the underlying effects give rise to all the wondrous fruits we can produce. Alchemists will tell you that the world is made up of many base materials, lead, copper, iron, gold, and so on. They are fixated on splitting things down into these components and investigating how they react with each other. However, there is more to the world than this. Certainly they represent the physical makeup of things, but they do not show the forces and energy that bring everything into motion. The forces of fire, cold, lightning, and life itself are all very real effects, and these we call the elements of Eyal. The true Archmage is interested in the interaction of the elemental forces of the world and manipulating them to his or her need. The elemental forces exist naturally in the world and are weaved around all things in an all-encompassing canvas. They move, vibrate, and resonate with the materials of the world, and the effects could each play heavily on one another. All creatures naturally make use of these elements, and some are more attuned to these threads than others. With great training and practice, we can become more attuned to these wild forces ourselves, and in so doing, some can match the speed of wolves, the strength of bears, the tenacity of trents, and even the immense natural power of dragons. But there is another way of gaining access to these elemental forces, a more direct way, though some would call it unnatural. That was a weird inflection I put on the end of that. Anyway, long ago, people discovered with much training, how to concentrate their wills to pluck the elemental threads directly. This can release great energies, and these can be shaped to produce real effects in the world. Plumes of fire, bolts of lightning, and blasts of ice can all be called forth by those suitably trained. The true masters of magic can go much further, combining many resonant forces to create complex physical effects. The tapping of threads can be a draining task, requiring much effort of will to sustain. This is what we have versed in the arcane call mana, that mental stamina dedicated to the interaction with the elements of the world. Continual use of magic is like the constant lifting and holding of heavy weights, and eventually one will find one's capacity drained. Practice allows one to build up greater pools of mana, and certain runes and spells can gradually build extra reserves to be called upon as needed. Magical runes and items are imbued with an attachment to certain elemental threads. This requires delicate work by experienced and gifted enchanters. The most intricate of magical artifacts demand many years of work, using intense mental effort to permanently attune the core materials to the right elemental energies. Gemstones are especially easy to work with in this craft, and alchemists use them often to bring about elemental effects. Some believe that magic is inherently wrong, that the so-called twisting of the elements with one's will can only lead to terrible things. As students of Engelwin, I assume you disagree. Magic is simply an extension of the forces of nature, and are we not natural creatures that use it? But remember that magic is still a powerful force that can be used for good or ill. Magic is indeed a tool of immense value. Use it wisely. Cool. So those are two really long-ass pieces of lore that I'm never going to read on camera ever again. Reading both of those took me 10 minutes. You know, I mean, like, I guess if you cut out all the extra little, bullshit I added, like, maybe 9.5. But still, that took me a while. But yeah, so those are kind of interesting. I mean, if you're at all interested in the background elements of the world or whatever, the world building, which I usually find pretty interesting, which is why I decided to read these. But yeah, so thank you very much for joining me on this special episode of Tome Tales of Maj'Eyal. Next episode, we get back into the regular, adventures of Shakalaka. So, thank you very much for watching, and join me next time.